right? Like, especially living in New York, I thought like, I'll never buy a house. Like if I do buy a house, like, especially like you need $150,000 down payment for 20% down in New York. Right. So to me, it was like for rich old guys. Like that's what I thought real estate investing was. I tried and failed at a lot of different real estate investing strategies. Again, being in New York, it was really hard. I tried all the different strategies and methods. And sure enough, I joined my local real estate investment association. There's the head of the local RIA. I pulled her aside one day and I said, hey, listen, Melissa, like, I've heard of all these different strategies, and how would you get started if you would do this? Like, I don't have much money. And she said, what I would do is I would use something called a 203K loan. And I had never heard about that in years and years of looking into it. And I said, what's a 203K loan? And she said, well, what it allows you to do is it allows you to purchase fixer-upper properties. Now, it's an owner-occupant loan. It's an FHA version of a rehab loan. But what you can do is you can buy a fixer-upper, live in the basement. Basements are big in New York. Live in the basement, rent out the upstairs, live for free, and do the renovation and build equity into that deal and use that equity to go and repeat the process, right? So and then she told me, I was like, oh, well, what do I need for a down payment? She said 3.5% is what FHA requires, 3.5% of the purchase price plus the renovation. And I'm like, she's like, 3.5% you can do, right? You might already have it right now. So my mind exploded. I didn't know it was a thing. And what was crazy again was that looking for years trying to get into real estate, not having knowledge that I could even buy a house, even as an owner occupant, for 3.5% down was kind of mind boggling to me. And that's where it really started.
Yeah. I mean, 3.5% is such a small down payment. Like most of you could get a second job and get 3.5%, to save some money and get 3.5% down. But secondly is you found out about the 203K loan because you networked with other real estate professionals. Yes. Because I think that's so important because everyone, how do I get started with no money? How do I do this with no money? Well, I think the first thing is to meet with people that are doing it so that you can get good tips and advice like you did with the 203K loan.
Right. Especially with the local RIA. Right. And I have, there's good and bad that comes from local RIAs. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that there's some value you can bring, right? And for me, I was joining everything. I was really engaging myself, and I think that's why Melissa confided in me. But like you said, when you get to see what people with the boots on the ground are doing, it opens your mind up, right? Again, having 4 years trying all different things of like, again, reading all sorts of books and different strategies and wholesaling and no money down and seller notes and all kinds of stuff, never hearing just this one thing. And all it took was one visit to the local meeting one night.
It's not like one aha moment. You watch one video, you go out and do it and you nail it. Like there's all these things from a personal development standpoint that led you to that meeting.
Absolutely. And I think that's also why I made the 203K work so well for me, right? Because at the end of the day, the 203K loan is there to help you renovate your house, right? You don't necessarily need to, be an investor to do this, right? You can use this loan to buy your own house and factor in the renovation costs so you don't have to pay out of pocket to renovate the kitchens and bathrooms. Having learned so much about real estate investing over the years of teaching myself and everything, when I looked at what you can do with the 203K loan, the low down payment, low interest rate, we can get into more on how you're able to buy up to a 4 unit, still only with 3.5% down, the ability to live for free, all these things, it's all kind of occurring to me like, holy cow, I can really leverage this thing, right? Because I was used to like talking to hard money lenders at the time. They wanted 30%, equity up front. And for me, again, that would be 150,000. That wasn't in the cards, but 3.5% in my market was, 10 grand. So, that was what really made me feel like, holy cow, this is a really good opportunity to take advantage of, especially being in the position I was in.
So break it down a little bit. So a 203K loan, do you have to be a first-time home buyer to do it?
No, common misconception. So the only requirement is that you are going to be occupying the property and it's going to be your new primary residence.
Essentially, this is house hacking.
Right. So I actually found out about house hacking by accident. And I also found out by accident that you were able to purchase multifamily properties. And then one of these properties that popped up was definitely the ugliest property on the MLS at the time. My loan officer, while we're going through these, he said, listen, this is a legal 2-family. I said, okay, what does that mean for me? He said, well, because the price it was listed at the time was like, I think 300,000 or something like that, 290,000. Again, this thing was in bad shape, like real bad shape. So he said, well, listen, with an FHA loan, you're able to buy up to a 4-unit. And what you can also do is you can forecast the future rental income of the other unit to your debt to income ratio. So essentially, you're able to get approved for significantly more than you would on your own. So what happened was I wasn't able to even get approved for it by itself. I think maybe I would just get it. But when you factored in the renovation costs, which get tacked onto your loan amount, which was about $80,000, I ended up picking up the property. So this is the property I ended up picking up. It was $270,000. I was only approved for about $290 or $300. That bumped me up to over $350,000, which allowed me to purchase the property plus get the renovation budget I needed to completely renovate the house. So that was an awesome thing. Was like, number one, again, I'm building the equity, right? So you're doing like a BRRRR strategy. You're buying the property and building equity into it. And then what you're also doing is you have the opportunity to live in one unit. And I was renting out the other while I was there. And pretty much it was covering all of my monthly payments. Action begets action, right? Like, so doing something will just cause momentum, right? There's a great quote. It's like a stoicism quote, philosophical quote. The obstacle is the way. I'm sure you've heard of it before. And it's something that I really focused on from that moment, especially through the 203K process. Again, we could get more into, but the beauty of the process was that I was able to just focus on what was in front of me, and that was it. And that removed all the other analysis paralysis and the stuff. The fact that I only had to focus on what was in front of me and having to go in head first into this, I was able to really just make it work.
Does any bank do this, or do you need to shop around for banks for this kind of loan?
So this is like the number one question, right? And probably the number one thing I get asked. And one of the reasons I actually started this community. So EJ, I love him. We're friends now and everything, but I learned out very quickly that he didn't know the 203K, and nobody in his office did. And I found that out the hard way. So a lot of issues that we ran into during this process and getting approved and getting the loan and all that process, I realized doesn't have to be that bad, right? And the reality of the 203K is, and a lot of the stuff that a lot of the myths and stuff that come from that are, it is a complex loan. Okay. It's not that complex in the sense that once you know how to use it, it's pretty clear cut. The problem is that if you don't give it the attention that it needs, then it could blow up in your face, right? I always say, like, with great power comes great responsibility with this loan, right? This, in my opinion, is the most powerful form of leverage you can get as a first-time home buyer, as a owner occupant, as someone just buying real estate, right? Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to buy a property, take ownership of a property, plus get the bank to lend you basically up to what you're limited to on your pre-approval in funds to do the renovation. So none of this stuff comes out of your pocket. Really, all the risk is falling on the bank, right? So because of that, yeah, there's some extra steps and things to do in the process. But when it comes to lenders, what I found out, obviously, after doing it and having it done a couple more times and networking with people, is that there's mortgage officers and brokers out there that specialize in this. And that's really what you want to look for. A lot of my community and telling people is like, the number one thing is just get an experienced 203K renovation lender, right? And there's many of them in every market. You just have to find them. One cool trick I like to tell people is because it's all public info with a 203K loan, you're able to Google 203K endorsement summary. And what that'll bring up the first website. It's the HUD website. You go to that website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom to the most recent month and year. What it does is it lets you know of every brokerage and how many 203K loans they wrote in each market across the US. So what you can do is you can go on there and go scroll through and see, like, oh, Loan Depot did 5 of them in my market in the last 2 months, right? And then so you can go and then call Loan Depot and say, hey, call your local Loan Depot branch and say, hey, who heads up the renovation department in your brokerage? Then you can go and speak directly to the people that are experienced with these renovation loans, and you're going to have a much easier time than I did.